fuel choice that even rivals can agree on? Now that's worth the hype. Cheaper, cleaner, and homegrown. Pump it up with Unleaded 88.
Hello and welcome to Bigger Than 12 on Iowa Everywhere, but I'm in Missouri. Derek's in Texas. Aiden, he's holding down the fort up in Ankeny. That's what makes this podcast network truly great. You can do it wherever, whenever. I'm joining you on a Sunday morning. Derek, how you doing, my friend?
Doing good. How is the beautiful city of St. Louis?
As the great World Series champion Chris Bryant said, it's boring. I'm having fun. Don't get me wrong. The Arch Madness is up there with the best conference tournaments in the sport. So I'm enjoying that. I'm loving that. But the city itself, just looking out the window, there's some arch. It's just a boring city. That's all you can say.
What's crazy is I've been to St. Louis. I've been to that area, I think 5 or 6 times. And only one time have I stepped foot outside the airport of that city, because every time I fly somewhere, one of my connecting flights is always in St. Louis for whatever reason, especially when I go up to Iowa.
So they've got decent pizza, they've got good beer, Busch Light. I don't know what else they have. The only problem is when you step outside, you can just taste the mediocre baseball. Like it's just in the air. And I'm staying in Ballpark Village, so I'm just in the presence of one of the most overrated catchers of all time, Yadier Molina. Sorry, we've probably got a lot of Cardinals fans listening, so I should probably chill out.
Well, you and Aiden are Cubs fans, right? Y'all are both Cubs fans.
We are, yeah.
And I'm an Astros fan. We were a former member of the NL Central, so we do have something in common. I think that is the hate of the St. Louis Cardinals.
I don't think I have a trash can in here.
Oh, jeez.
To bang, but
you're going to piss a lot of people off. You're going to piss me off doing that.
Sorry.
Don't do that. Come on.
Yeah, I don't know where to go from there. We should probably just get into hoops before I piss off an entire city. But before we do that, I'm not going to piss anybody off with this, because I'm going to thank WealthCharter for sponsoring Bigger Than 12. WealthCharter's the best. Tim Hawkins and his team, they do it all. They've been doing it for 25 years, specializing in retirement planning, but they can also help you with any tax questions, any financial planning for whatever stage of life you're in, whether you're a recent college grad, young adult, you're in your 40s, or you're really close to retirement. Tim Hawkins and his team in Ankeny can get you on a great plan. They've been doing it, again, 25 years supporting local, and you can visit them to schedule an appointment at WealthCharterRetirement.com. We got a good show for you today. The regular season's over, and the Big 12 tournament is coming up. So we're gonna recap a little bit of Saturday, but admittedly, I'm at the Missouri Valley tournament. I was there almost 10 hours yesterday, so I wasn't able to catch any games live. I went back and rewatched a couple last night. So we're only going to focus on really 2 or 3 of the big games from yesterday, and then we're going to get into a Big 12 tournament preview, and we're going to give out our Big 12 awards, Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, all that fun stuff, and then we'll close with some other topics. Should be a fun show here on Bigger Than 12. Let's start with what I think is the best game of Saturday, and that's Arizona at Kansas. My take from this was, what an interesting way for the most unique group of seniors, probably in KU history, if not the last 25 years, to close out their time at Fog Allen Fieldhouse. You've got 2 transfers that, in a lot of ways, haven't lived up to expectations, and you've got 2 guys who won a title as role players and maybe haven't taken the baton to the next level like they were expected. But all four of those guys, all four of them, were the reason that KU won that game. And really, nobody else on the team did much. Hunter Dickinson was the best player on the floor by far. Had maybe his best game as a Jayhawk, tied a career high. He had an answer almost every time down the floor. Zeke Mayo, he had a few moments. It's been a rough couple of weeks for him, but he went 5 of 7 from 3, hit some huge shots down the stretch. DeJuan Harris Jr., he hit a massive 3. He doesn't take a lot of them. Had a big putback, and then had the dagger assist to his buddy KJ Adams, who put the exclamation point on with a slam dunk. And that's a group that's going to go down with a ton of mixed emotions from KU fans. But yesterday showed me that they can still improve that approval rating if they can make a run in March. And they've shown me a lot of pride with that close loss at Houston on Monday. And then they showed me a lot of pride in that win against Arizona on Saturday. Impressive senior day from the Jayhawks.
Yeah, this was a big game for Kansas, and one of the reasons I'm going to say that is because a loss here would actually made the Jayhawks 500 in Big 12 play.
Man.
And Kansas has not been 500 or below in Big 12 play or conference play for that matter since 1988 and 1989 when they were back in the Big 8 days. So, but credit to Kansas, they handled their business. You mentioned Hunter Dickinson put on a clinic, 33 points. I thought Zeke Mayo played really well too. I wasn't shocked to see Kansas win this game because to me, I think this was more about the other side. Arizona, this is a team who we have talked about recently a lot for all the wrong reasons. And that still is the case with this team for me. The Wildcats in their regular season going, 3-5 in their last 8 games. That's what I call limping literally into Kansas City. I know at one point we said this team could make a run in the tournament, but I think I'm over that now. This is a broken team. And with that said, to be honest here, I'm not confident in either Kansas or Arizona really moving forward. I mean, this is a great way to end the season for Kansas, a regular season win. But for me, I don't really feel good about either one of these teams going into this month.
See, I'll disagree a little bit. I don't think Arizona's dead. I know they're limping, but man, their schedule to close the year has just been brutal. You've got a loss to Houston. You've got a loss to BYU, who we know is one of the hottest teams in the country, if not the hottest team in the country. You've got losses at Iowa State, at Kansas. So while it is certainly not a strong start or strong finish to the season, They did show me a little bit yesterday in Fog Allen. This was a 14-point game in the first half. I thought it was over. What I had in my notes as I was watching the game, because admittedly, I knew KU won. That was about all I knew. I didn't know much before I rewatched this game. So in my notes I had, this feels a lot like when Iowa State went to Fog Allen a couple weeks ago. KU coming off of a loss. They're a desperate team. Arizona's reeling. Iowa State was reeling at the time, and KU punched them in the mouth. I thought the game was over, and Arizona battled back into the game and took the lead a few different times and really had a shot to win it down the stretch. And another part that I was impressed about is there's these Fog Allen kill shots where Zeke Mayo steps into a 3, a KJ Adams lob. Plays that make the roof explode there typically end the game. I wrote down 5 different kill shots, and Arizona bounced back to all of them except the last one, of course. And that showed me something. I think Tommy Lloyd is a really, really good coach, and I think they'll be better for this 3-5 stretch to end the season because, man, they've played some really tough teams in some tough environments.
That's fair to say. I think I'm going to jump off that board, that bandwagon there. I don't think I'm going to hang on to it any longer for me.
Yeah, that's fair. If you're living and dying by Caleb Love, it can go sideways.
All kind of ways there.
What I did like from them was Trey Townsend. He was a guy who started most of the year. couldn't buy a shot. He's been moved to the bench. He's only shooting 26% from three, knocked down 3 of them on Saturday. He's the type of guy that if he can find some confidence, add some shooting off the bench, because that's what Arizona's typically missing is 3-point shooting. If he can get back to himself, add another just rotational solid player, that'd be really good for Arizona down the stretch. But I'll be interested to see where they end up in the NCAA tournament. Probably a 5 seed, if I had to guess, in that 4-5 range. That's a team with 2 or 3 seed talent that's had some low lows this year, and it's going to deflate their seeding. So if you're a 1 seed and you're looking at that 4-5 line, Arizona's probably the team you would want to see the least. If I had to guess, I think that's fair.
I think with both of these teams, it could go just either way in the tournament. I feel like if both of them were bounced out in the first round, I wouldn't be shocked by that at all.
Agreed.
I also wouldn't be shocked to see them both make like a Sweet 16. So take it for what it is.
Yeah, I've declared Kansas dead on this podcast. I think they've shown me some life. They could still easily, they're probably going to be a 6 or a 7 seed. So if you're a 7 seed and lose to a 10, I don't consider that an upset. And they could very, very, very easily lose to a 10 seed. But if you're a 2 seed, if you're Tennessee and you're thinking, oh, great, 2 seed, what a season, and you see the other side of the bracket and it's Kansas, I can imagine what those fans would feel. I know this isn't the same Kansas team of old, but they were ranked number 1 to start the year. Ugh. And it's Kansas. It's Bill Self. So
that seems like a lifetime ago.
I don't think Kansas is going to make the Sweet 16, but again, at the same time, I can understand maybe the fear or anxiety that a 2 or a 3 seed is going to get when they see the Kansas Jayhawks pop up in their pod in March Madness.
Yeah, you were talking about dead teams here. I think we're going to talk about one here in a bit.
Oh, man. Speaking of dead, Iowa State goes on the road and dismantles Kansas State. I expected Iowa State to win. I thought it was a good spot for them to bounce back, and if they didn't bounce back, I would have been really, really concerned. Like, really concerned. So while I expected to win, I don't think I expected that easy of a win. What impressed me is another really solid defensive effort, especially right out of the gate. Just took the will out of K-State early. And since that Oklahoma State game, I do think the start of games for Iowa State on the defensive end, it's been a pretty constant thing that they've been incredible on that side of the ball against Arizona, BYU, and K-State in that first 10 minutes. And that shows to me that they're aware that that's kind of how they have to play. We're at the point now where I just don't think Iowa State in the half court is going to beat a bunch of teams consistently. They've got to do it on the defensive end. They've got to play Otzel basket burger ball, as the old phrase goes. They've got to create turnovers, get out and running. And I think the team is maybe slowly figuring that out, that yes, they're better on offense than they have been in the past. There's no question. They've got more talent. They've got more options. But I still don't think they're a top-tier team offensively. The identity of this team is on the defensive side of the ball, and that win in Manhattan completely showed how far the defense can take them.
Yeah, this was a revenge game for Iowa State, and Curtis Jones was leading the charge there for the Cyclones. He gives you 24 off the bench on the road. Even though I didn't think he shot the ball that great, he came through with his free throws for sure. I thought defensively, as you mentioned, Iowa State played really well, and most importantly, they cut down on turnovers to me, which was also great to see. I don't think there's a whole lot to take away from Iowa State in this game outside of them probably being a lock now, at least for a 3 seed. Maybe with the chance for a two seed in Kansas City, depending on how that goes. But for me, this game put a nail in the coffin for Kansas State. Coming into the weekend, they were on the outside looking in pretty far. And this loss to Iowa State, I think, just sealed their fate in my book. So you can say goodbye to Kansas State here. And I don't know how, but I'm sure Jerome Tang's going to find a way to talk his way out of this season.
So in a few minutes, we're going to do our superlatives. Excuse me. We are going to go over our Big 12 awards, but is it okay if I share one early?
Yeah.
I'm going to go for the worst coaching job in America, Jerome Tang. Congratulations, Jerome. Expensive
I knew you were
roster.
going to do that.
Expensive roster. That stretch. They went into Hilton and beat Iowa State. And honestly, that loss that Iowa State had, to lose to Jerome Tang in that building, it's the most inexcusable loss of the century for Iowa State. There's no excuse ever to lose to a team like that. But give Tang credit. He showed just how good of a roster that he assembled in that stretch where they beat Iowa State, they beat Kansas, they beat Arizona. Look at him. And then, boom, one loss. They hit some adversity. Everything comes crashing down. That is the sign of an unhealthy program. That's the sign of just a poor coach team. Look at that. You have a 6-game losing streak, dead in the water. They win one game, and then all of a sudden, this expensive roster that Jerome was able to negotiate his way into to not leave K-State, that roster shows up and they look like one of the best teams in the country. You lose one game, and then instantly they're again one of the worst teams in the entire country. I don't know how he did it, but Jerome, congratulations on winning the worst coach in America.
I knew you were going to say something like that, but I don't know if I'm going to be as harsh as you were. You really spoke your mind there, but I was on the Kansas State bandwagon for a little bit there before it just came crashing back down to earth. So, yeah, it's definitely an interesting season for Kansas State. Maybe one of the weirdest seasons I have seen in a while from them. I mean, you talk about it. They have a rough start, get really hot kind of during the middle stretch of the season there, and then they just fell off a cliff once again. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what they do moving forward there.
There's ebbs and flows in a basketball season. Iowa State's the best example. You have these. You beat Kansas by 17 on your home floor. You beat Arizona by 17. You lose at home to K-State by 19. Again, awful loss, all things considered. But what happened? You have some highs, you come down. You have some lows, you come up. It happens. You just go up and down. It's not supposed to go, you climb Mount Everest, and then you fall 30,000 feet flat on your face. That's not what's supposed to happen in this sport. And, I mean, really for back-to-back years, that's what's happened in Manhattan. They had an Elite Eight run. I won't use the F word in between. Fluke. But it wasn't a roster completely assembled by Tang. Marquise Noel was there already. He was a great player. There's no doubt. And then last January, they were in the top 20 and missed the NCAA tournament. It's hard to put into words just how high and low this program has been under 3 years of Jerome Tang, and he's got an important year 4. He's not getting fired this year. Even though he's going to get the plaque sitting up in his office of bigger than 12's worst coach in America, he is going to get another year. I'm almost certain of that. He's got to put something together. He's got to get a team in the NCAA tournament, or else that buyout, it does go down after 2026 of April. So if he doesn't get it figured out, I mean, I'm sure they would be happy to accept it.
Oh,
do we have that budget?
I don't know. It's gonna cut into the beer budget, man. I don't know about that.
Aiden approved it, so we'll be sending that on its way to Manhattan. We'll close with Houston Baylor. We don't need to talk a crazy amount about the game itself. Baylor led most of the first half, and then Houston did what they do. They took over in the second half. They took a double-digit lead. I was watching this at the hotel bar working on my rundown. I thought this game was over, and then, man, Baylor made it close late. I never thought they were going to win, but I was impressed by Baylor to hang in there against Houston.
To me, I think this was the best game of the night for me, at least. This was just another notch in the old belt for Houston. They go to Waco and squeak out a tough road win against a team who is really kind of fighting for their postseason lives. I mean, LJ Cryer, shout out to him. It was a homecoming of sorts because he played 3 seasons in Waco before transferring to Houston, gives you 22 on the evening. And he's been an outstanding player all year long, and Saturday night was a great way to kind of cap off a great regular season for him. But what's crazy to me is Houston didn't even make a single field goal in the last 6 minutes of that game, and Baylor comes roaring back. They just couldn't quite complete it there. You have Roberts draining those 2 key free throws to ice the game, which was clutch. It was just a nice win for Houston, who have now won 14 straight road games, which is insane and incredibly hard to do. I mean, they've made it through Big 12 play without a single road loss.
10-0 on the road in Big 12 play is
crazy.
It's going to be one of those stats. You know, my favorite sports stat ever. It's Larry Fitzgerald has more career tackles than drops.
Oh,
Houston, wow. that stat, I swear, it just pops up in my head like once a day. Houston going 10-0 on the road in Big 12 play in the 2024-25 season. That's going to be something in 20 years that I'm like, what? They did what?
How did that happen?
They went 19-1.
Yeah.
It just doesn't really happen in modern college basketball. Even those great Kansas teams in a good Big 12 conference, they didn't really do that. So what a job. What a job by Kelvin Sampson in Houston for a team that I don't think I wrote them off, or I don't think you wrote them off. But I did say back in December that I didn't think they were going to be at the same level as last year. And a lot of that had to do with the loss of Jamal Shead, who's playing minutes on the Toronto Raptors now. And I was wrong. They elevated.
Yep.
They found a way to get better in their second year in the Big 12. And if that's what the jump from year 1 to year 2 looks like, what's year 3? Do they not have a single road game that they win by single digits? Is it going to be 10-0 on the road and all double-digit wins? Like, what's next for this program? I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek, but I can't be more impressed by what they've done in the conference in their first 2 seasons.
Yeah, we knew Houston was going to be good this year. We didn't think that they were going to be this dominant with the way they have played this season. Like, we thought they were going to be in that top 1 or 2 conversation in the Big 12, but for them just to completely be a step ahead of everybody else was just incredible this year. And they finished with a better record this year than they did last year.
Man, and I don't know how far down you get on the list of national champions. I don't know how they slip past 2 or 3. If you're ranking it based off of most likely on who you think could be cutting down the nets in San Antonio, I don't know what order you go in, but it's Houston, Duke, and Auburn. You can put them 1, 2, 3 in any order. I don't really care, but Houston's got as good a shot as anybody to cut down the nets in their home state.
That's fair.
Speaking of home state, Aiden and I are Iowans, so we've got a little advantage on this Iowa trivia question.
I'm an honorary Iowan.
Sure.
Only if you get this question right.
All right.
All right, Taman Lipsey won Mr. Basketball in 2022. Can you name the last Iowa Mr. Basketball to graduate from Iowa State?
God. I feel like it's going to be an obvious answer, but I'm not going to know it. I have no idea. No, I don't think I could come up with anything there. I every time I think of like a good player, it's from a different state. That's Wisconsin. I couldn't tell you.
It's Fred, right?
Yeah, it's Fred Hoiberg.
So
Holy crap.
Clayton Vett went to Iowa State, but transferred after a year, I think.
So I remember when Omaha Baloo committed. I want to say I shared this stat on the air that so they obviously got commitments back-to-back years from Taman and Omaha. And it was, I think it was the first time that Mr. Basketball went to Iowa State since Fred or something like that.
Omaha didn't win.
Oh, that's
Mr.
right.
Basketball.
He lost to Price
Sanford.
Sanford.
Yeah.
Okay, what year did Fred win it?
Would have been 91.
Yeah.
Okay,
91.
well.
Don't act like you don't remember.
That was before my time even. I wasn't even born yet.
The mayor. So, man, that's a good trivia question. Thank you, Aiden.
That's a good one.
We're going to get into some Big 12 awards. We've got 5 of them for you. Well, 6, but I already shared the first one. You're welcome for the preview. We've got
Plaques
Player
in the
of the
mail.
Year. We've got Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, Newcomer, Defensive Player, and Sixth Man of the Year. Let's start with Player of the Year. Probably the most interesting Player of the Year race in this conference that I can remember. Who do you got, Derek?
I'm going with JT Toppin from Texas Tech. Leads the Red Raiders in scoring, rebounding, top 5 in the Big 12 in both of those categories. JT, to me, plays with the fire under his ass, and he's one of those guys that gives it 110% every time he steps on the floor. I don't think there's anybody in the Big 12 that plays harder than JT. He truly is the heart and soul of that Tech team and is a big reason why Tech is near the top of the Big 12. And it's a big reason why I think they can make a deep run in the NCAA tournament.
That's a great pick. He almost plays too hard because he almost feels like every game he rolls an ankle or something because this guy is just going balls to the wall for 40 minutes straight. It's a great choice. He came in on second on my ballot because I'm going with LJ Cryer. I hate to do best player on the best team. But, man, when a team goes 19-1 in the Big 12, when they go 10-0 on the road in the conference, I think somebody on that team's got to be Player of the Year. And LJ Cryer was the best shot maker on the team. He was so good in big games. You think back to that game against Iowa State in Houston. Just incredible. He's a player that's had a fascinating career. Won a national championship early on Baylor when he was a young pup. Goes to Houston. He's carved out a role as a star player there, and he could very well be the best player on a championship team. But again, like points per game in the conference, he's not in the top 10. They're a lower possession team, but man, they shoot the ball so well, and a lot of that it comes from number 4 on Houston.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with either pick there, I don't think.
Coach of the Year, another just really tough decision. I'm going to go with Grant McCasland. It's extremely hard to go against Sampson because of what the case I just made for Cryer. But Texas Tech, this was a team that was expected to be good, fine. They're expected to be a tournament team, probably a 7, 8, 9 seed. They weren't expected to be this good. They are in the driver's seat seemingly for a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. They finished second in the Big 12. He brought in a guy like JT Toppin. He brought in Darian Williams last year. He is recruited extremely well. Christian Anderson. This is a well-built team and a well-coached team that owns the best win of the season, a win at Houston. A couple of their losses towards the end of the year came shorthanded. I think McCasland is a rising star in the sport, and he is very worthy of Coach of the Year.
That's a respectable pick, in my opinion. But to me, this is a no-brainer. I back-to-back Big 12 regular season champs in his first 2 seasons in the conference. And on top of that, it's the toughest conference in America to do that in. 27-4 overall record, 19-1 in Big 12 play, which is actually better than their record last year, which I think some people don't realize. Since December 1st, Houston has lost 1 game. 1. Is there anyone else in the country that can say that? Forget about Big 12 Coach of the Year. Kelvin Sampson should be the national coach of the year.
I can get behind that. It's splitting hairs at this point. It's just such an arbitrary award because some years, it goes to the best coach for the best team. And then some years it goes to a guy that takes over a program that's nothing and then turns them into something. So there's a lot of different ways to interpret this award. But yeah, if Sampson wins this award, there will be no protest from me. There will be protest, though, if he's not in the National Coach of the Year conversation. He certainly should be up there.
For sure.
This next one was not the easiest to decide, but probably the second easiest, because if he's my runner-up for Player of the Year, and he's
I knew you were going there.
He's got to be the newcomer of the year. I'll go JT Toppin. I don't have much to add aside from what you just added, making him your Player of the Year, but 18 points a game, 9 rebounds, the engine to the second best team in the conference. Miles Uzon would be my runner-up, and I'd say VJ Edgecombe was also considered. But yeah, Toppin's the runaway winner for this one.
If I hadn't picked Toppin to win my Player of the Year, I would have definitely went with him. But since he is my Player of the Year, I went with UCF's Keyshawn Hall. He comes in from George Mason to UCF, and that's no easy transition, and he made it look pretty easy. He's the leading scorer in the Big 12 heading into the weekend, and I know UCF hasn't been great as of late, but Hall has been the guy all season long for that team.
He had that awesome game against, I think, Arizona State back in January on a Wednesday night where he went off for 40 points. Mm-hmm. Certainly a good player. I think he's only a junior, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's right.
So we'll see if he'll be back in Orlando for next year. And man, if Player of the Year was tough, it can't be as tough as this one. Defensive Player of the Year in a defensive-heavy conference. There are so many different ways you could go. Derek, who's your selection?
There were 3 Big 12 players on the Naismith Defensive Player of the Year watch list, and I'm going to go with Joseph Tugler from Houston. Leads the Big 12 in Hakeem percentage at 15.9%. And for those wondering what that is, it's the sum of a player's block and steal percentage, and that 15.9% ranks in the 99th percentile nationally, also ranks 3rd in the conference in blocks per game. So I'm going to go with Houston's Joseph Tugler for my Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, there's not a wrong choice. JoJo is maybe the best shot blocker in all of America. Incredible at anchoring that Houston defense. I'm going to go with Tamin Lipsey. This is an award that he probably should have gotten last year, I think, over Jamal Shed. And this is a player who he doesn't have the physical gifts of a JoJo Tugler. You just look at the height discrepancy, the natural gifts. What Tamin does on the defensive end is all heart. And I don't know where Iowa State would be without him. I think he's been that unsung hero, and who I know this last stretch of the season has been bad. 7-7 in the last 14 before their win Saturday. It could have been a lot worse if not for Tamin Lipsey. I think he's the best defensive guard in America, and he's a big reason why Iowa State's one of the best defensive teams in the Big 12. But yeah, I think you could have gone Tugler, even Juwan Roberts deserves some love. Gasson, K-State, certainly in the conversation. There's a lot of guys that had a case. I think there's an all defensive team, if I'm not mistaken, at the end of the year. So
I believe so.
We'll see who ends up on that one. And then we don't need to talk about Sixth Man of the Year for too long. I saw this morning that Curtis Jones won National Sixth Man of the Year for some publication, so I don't know how there's much of a question that either of us would go away from Curtis Jones as Sixth Man of the Year in the Big 12. Iowa State's leading scorer certainly has a case to be first team All Big 12. I think he will be. If not, at the very least, he'll be second team Big 12. Doing it coming off the bench. He's the best sixth man in America, and I'm not really sure there's a debate to that.
I don't think there's any debate to it at all. He's the best sixth man in the entire country. He could start for any team in the entire country pretty much.
Yeah, if you want to build an all-bench team for the conference, I think up next I'd probably have Christian Anderson of Texas Tech. He was a freshman, one. So he was also up there for newcomer of the year. He's a great player. But yeah, the gap between Jones and Anderson. Anderson's he's that Lou Williams type player where he comes off the bench and he's a flamethrower and he can get you those points quick. But it's not like they rely on him. Iowa State relies on Curtis Jones to be himself, and that makes him a pretty easy choice for sixth man of the year. We'll get into our Big 12 tournament preview shortly, but before we talk Big 12 tournament and before you head to the Big 12 tournament, please stop by Freedom Tire. It's not too long of a drive from Ames or Des Moines to Kansas City, but it's a long enough drive where if you run into some car problems, some tire problems, you don't want to be stuck on I-35 in northern Missouri. Are you serious? You don't want to do that. Stop by Freedom Tire. They've got locations in Ames, Altoona, Urbandale, West Des Moines, and Des Moines on Fleur Drive. Quentin Crowner and his team of experts will take care of you, whether you need new tires, an oil change, or just a 6-month checkup on your car. Take it to Freedom Tire. Thanks to Freedom Tire for supporting what we do here at Iowa Everywhere. We're going to preview the Big 12 tournament. Let's go over who wins it. We got a dark horse, most likely to be upset, and then some of the bubble teams. But the story, it's got to start with, I don't even know if I have the words to say it. The court.
Oh, man. I'll let you go first on that one.
It's so bad, and I know we're late. This was when I saw the court for the first time. This is one of those times where I wanted an emergency pod. I was wishing that we were a daily show, because I knew other shows were going to beat us to it, and we were going to be late. But it can't go by how ugly the court is. It's an eyesore. Just play basketball. I tweeted that it looks like something that I would have made on NBA 2K16. Something that I would have spent 7 hours on in my mom's basement, building this stupid custom court for a custom team that I was going to play with twice and then never touch again. I mean, are you kidding me? It's terrible. And don't get me wrong, Yormark's done his job. This court has become a talking point, not just amongst Big 12 people, but nationally, and that's what he wants. But man, there comes a point where, for me, the publicity maybe doesn't match what's actually going on during the game. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to watch. Unfortunately, it's not going to stop me from watching Cincinnati UCF next week. I'm still going to watch, but I'm just going to be pissed off the entire time because I'm so distracted by the stupid court.
Sometimes less is more, and I know Brett Yormark's slogan is younger, hipper, cooler, but that court is ugly, uglier, and ugliest. I mean, it's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. I had to think about it for a second. Do you remember the halftime performance at the Big 12 title game, Neo?
Yeah.
You remember that? Okay, yeah. I grew up in the 2000s.
I didn't know who Neo.
Exactly.
Neo. I didn't know who he was.
We are learning here on Iowa Everywhere. And I grew up in the 2000s, and I remember him from when I was in middle school, but he wasn't someone I was excited about when I heard he was playing. That was a miss in my book. This court is an even bigger miss. They try to make it appealing. I mean, there was nothing wrong with the old court, and somebody at the Big 12 headquarters was going to do whatever it took to get a raise and get that corner office. And I sure hope that person got it, because they made the rest of us suffer by having to look at that ugly ass thing. I mean, I was trying to put my finger on it, what it looks like. Can you get a zoom in on the actual court, Aiden? Is that possible? I think the court, when you look at it closely, it looks like a truck toolbox. I mean, just looking at that ugly ass thing makes me want to turn the channel. I get like truck toolbox vibes when you look at the little numerals on the court. When you look at it really close, that's what I get. It looks like a toolbox to me. There you go. See?
Yeah, I see
the toolbox pattern. Yeah.
I don't get it. So I know on the broadcast a couple nights ago, Yormark said that he got compliments that it looked like Louis Vuitton. I don't even know. I know it's some fashion thing. I don't care about Louis Vuitton or who
was
Louis
complimenting
is.
that. They were just kissing his ass. They had to be just kissing his ass.
Yeah, it was some yes man. And
oh, come on.
So
yeah,
I asked Kenzo of Overthinking here in Iowa Everywhere what Louis Vuitton is, and I think she said some purse or something like that. We're not appealing to purse people for the Big 12. We're not sorry, not purse, but like $50,000 purses. That's not the type of people that are watching Big 12 basketball, man. It's a blue collar conference. If the very rich, I don't know who owns Louis Vuitton, but I'm just going to assume that it's only the very rich. We're the everyman's conference, dude. Give me a break.
Yeah, just bad.
And unfortunately, there's going to be basketball played on that court next week, and my eyes will get a lot of the court in Kansas City. I know in the rundown I put who wins it first. Let's do that last. So let's start. Okay. Who is the most likely dark horse in the Big 12? Aiden pulled up the bracket here if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I could not pick one team. To me, like a dark horse team would be a below a 5 or 6 seed, and I just don't really see any team below that making a run, just because of how great the top of this conference is. Like, I'd maybe take a flyer on like Baylor or somebody, since they're fighting for a spot in the tournament, but maybe West Virginia. But I don't feel comfortable with either one of those teams. And in fact, I think both of those teams are probably more likely to lose their opening game than they are to win this whole thing. I don't really have a pick. I couldn't come up with anything logical.
Yeah, so I think Kansas, I don't think you can consider them a dark horse.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at someone who doesn't have that double bye, I mean, Iowa State, obviously, but it wouldn't shock me at all to see Kansas make a run to the championship, because it's a pseudo home game. They just beat Arizona. So if they can get past Utah or UCF, and they've got a really good shot of beating Arizona, you get in the semis, who knows what happens. If we want to go, below the 6, if you want to go to the teams with no buys, if I just had to choose one of those, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, Colorado, TCU, Arizona State, K-State, UCF, Utah,
ugh.
I guess
you're just rolling the dice at this point.
I guess I'd go Cincy, and they're sliding so bad.
Oh,
it's been a bad season, but this is still of those teams, the team that had the highest expectations coming into the year. Jizzle James is really good, and he's good enough to win a game by himself. So if I could see any of those teams making a run to the semis or the final, I guess I'd go Cincy. But man,
you don't feel good about that pick.
I would not feel good about it at all. If they were to play West Virginia or Baylor the next game, then maybe. But playing against Iowa State in that morning game in Kansas City, it's gonna be tough.
Yeah.
Up next, who's the most likely to be upset on the other end of the spectrum?
I hate to pick on Kansas, but I feel like they're the obvious choice here. They're one of those teams. I think so. I think, they're one of the teams that have to play on opening day. They get Colorado, who played them tough not too long ago. And Colorado actually is coming off a big win against TCU. I think they won by 20.
No, you got it
Saturday.
wrong. So they've got a bye.
They have a bye.
They play the winner of UCF and Utah.
Ooh, I still take Kansas. I'm still taking Kansas for that matter. I think I looked at something wrong then this morning.
Were you looking at the women's bracket?
I might have been. I might have been. I have no idea.
I have no idea.
I'm still taking Kansas just because of how up and down that team has been. I don't trust them one bit. Like I said earlier, that's a team that wouldn't surprise me if they lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament. It also wouldn't surprise me if they made a Sweet 16 appearance. I can use that same logic in this sense. I wouldn't be surprised if they lost, their first game in the Big 12 tournament, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they ended up in the finals in Kansas City either. So I think Kansas, to me, is probably the most likely to be upset. Well, depending on what you call a true upset, too, like Cincinnati or Oklahoma State losing or any one of those teams falling, that's not really an upset in my book. So it's got to be one of the top tier teams in the conference, at least top, 5 or 6.
Yeah, I'm going to go with K-State. I think they're – no, I'm kidding. I'm joking. Sorry, I'm just picking on.
You got me for a second there.
If any K-State fans are still listening after this, you're a brave soldier.
They've probably thrown their phone or punched their something.
I've been mean today, but maybe I've been speaking truth that they believe too. That's also a possibility. I'm going to go Arizona. I'm predicting. I think KU will beat Arizona and be in the semifinal. It's the late game Thursday night. If they're playing KU, it's going to be a home game for the Jayhawks. KU just beat them. I think Arizona is and they're limping. They're ripe for an upset in Kansas City. It would not shock me whatsoever to see them get knocked off by KU. But again, it doesn't feel like much of an upset to me. So yeah, I feel like it's kind of a cop-out answer, but I think they're going to lose. Like I would pick that tomorrow.
I put Arizona and Kansas kind of in the same boat there. Like I keep mentioning, it just nothing would shock me with either one of those teams.
Well, who's going to win it? Who's cutting down the nets Saturday night at the T-Mobile Center?
I'm going with the hottest team in the Big 12, and I am not talking about Houston. I'm going to go BYU. After beating Utah last night, they ended the regular season with an 8-game winning streak. And I don't know if there's anybody that can stop this team right now. I mean, offensively, they're playing as well as any team, not just in the Big 12, but in the entire country. I wouldn't be shocked to see BYU win the whole damn conference tournament and, probably even make a crazy run in the NCAA tournament for that matter. So I'm taking BYU here. I know Houston is probably the best team in the Big 12 overall. They're the most consistent team in the Big 12, but I'm going with BYU. I think just they caught fire at the right time here.
They have fans everywhere. Like that's the good part about BYU. So I'm sure they'll be well represented in Kansas City. But if I'm not mistaken, doesn't Kansas City have like an extremely high Mormon population?
You were asking the wrong guy for that.
I feel like I've heard that. So because I want to say last year when I was there was a lot of BYU fans there even after they got bounced. So I
think they're just everywhere in general.
That has nothing to do with on the court, but my point is it's hard for me to pick away from the Midwest just because of the fan aspect, but I do think BYU will be pretty well represented. I think that's a good pick, but I'm going to go with Texas Tech.
Good pick.
I think the bracket breaks pretty well for them. Again, they'll most likely play Baylor on that Thursday, a team that they should be able to handle pretty easily, and then they'll get either Kansas or Arizona. I think they're better than both of those teams. And then you get in the championship and you see what happens. You see if you get BYU, Houston, Iowa State. I like how Tech's playing. I like how they're healthy, and I think they're peaking at the right time. And a win in Kansas City would certainly solidify a 2 seed. I think even getting to the championship would do that as well. Give me the Red Raiders to win. Would that be their first ever Big 12 tournament championship? Did they? I'm trying to remember. I'll Google it.
Yeah, we'd have to Google that.
I don't know if they would have. I don't know if they won it in 2019 when they when they had Chris Beard win the national championship?
I don't think they did that year.
I know Kansas beat them in a Big 12 championship one year. All right, I've got it pulled up. So, yeah, no, they have never won a Big 12 tournament championship.
Wow.
The only team outside of Kansas and Iowa State that's won a championship since 2012 is Texas. All the others have been won by Iowa State and Kansas, which is just crazy.
That's why they call it Hilton South, don't they?
That is why they call it Hilton South. I've got a trivia question for you, just a bonus one. So, of the teams remaining in the Big 12, keyword remaining in the Big 12, other than Iowa State and Kansas, who is the last current Big 12 school to win a Big 12 tournament championship? Bonus points if you can give me the year. Aiden, if you want to hop in too.
Go.
I was just looking at it, so I'm disqualified from this.
Oh,
cheater.
Is it Oklahoma State, maybe?
It is.
Okay. I was trying to think Oklahoma State. They were pretty good back in the day. So what year that would have been? I don't know, 2009? I don't know.
2005. But yeah.
Okay.
Good work getting that. So Missouri won a couple and Texas has won a couple. But other than that, since 2006, it's been pretty much all Iowa State, Kansas, and then, yeah, a couple from Missouri and Texas.
Wow.
Not that
it's really
that
a small list.
Year, but yeah, it is a small list. It's crazy to look at. So we saw last year how the tournament maybe didn't help Iowa State as far as seeding purposes go. I do think conference tournaments still matter for bubble teams. There are 3 bubble teams heading into the weekend, and I could make the argument that there's 0, but just for the sake of it, Baylor, West Virginia, and Cincinnati. I think Baylor's a lock regardless, but one win in Kansas City would leave no doubt, certainly would get them out of the play-in. I think West Virginia's in the same boat. One win, you are off of the last 4 in, you're off of the play-in game, and you should be squarely in as a 9 or a 10 seed. Cincinnati, though, they were kind of the last remaining bubble team in the conference, but they have really, really slid down the stretch. I think they're going to have to win 3 in Kansas City. That would include a win over UCF, Iowa State, and BYU.
Yeah, I think you're right with West Virginia and Baylor. Both of them were in Lenardi's bracket already before the weekend. I think a win in Kansas City for each one of those teams will probably lock them. As for Cincy, I mean, after that loss to Oklahoma State, I think they may have to win the whole damn thing just to get in. I don't really see a scenario, even if they make the semifinals getting in. I think they have to at least make the finals and maybe win the conference for them to have a good shot at getting in.
Yeah, the end of the season's just been so bad. Bad for them. Which it makes it a little bit less interesting of a Big 12 tournament when
soft bubble.
There's not a bubble team. I mean, if Baylor or West Virginia have bad losses, like a 20-point loss to a UCF or a K-State, something like that, maybe it plays their way back onto the bubble.
That's a long way, though.
There's not a ton of stakes for the fringe teams this year, which can sometimes be the most fun part about these Power 5 conference tournaments.
Yeah, the only interesting storyline I think coming out of Kansas City is going to have to be somebody just coming out of nowhere and just making it to the finals or winning the whole thing, like a Cincinnati, whoever else it is towards the bottom there.
100%. A team that I don't think is going to be making a run is Utah. I wouldn't bet my money on it. They fired their coach, and they already hired their next coach. the Utes hire Alex Jensen, longtime NBA assistant, Utah alum. He spent almost a decade with the Trailblazers. He's been an assistant with the Mavericks, and he's coming back to his alma mater to coach Utah. I've got a take on this, but I want to hear yours first, Eric.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't know a whole lot about Alex here, so I know he went to Utah, was a Utah guy. He actually played in the 98. I looked this up, played in the 98 national championship game where Utah played Kentucky. He was part of Utah's, some of their best basketball years ever at that school. You know, he spent 10 years at the NBA as an assistant, and that's what he brings to the table is that NBA experience. And I just hope he knows what he's walking into. Utah hasn't made a tournament appearance in almost 10 years. And unlike the NBA, you've got to deal with NIL, which I found pretty interesting that the Salt Lake Tribune actually reported that Utah had about, $2 million in NIL money for the current season for this basketball team. So, and to compete in the Big 12, I think that's going to have to change. Maybe hiring him will help boosters open up that wallet. But to his credit, he does know what success looks like, and he knows what NBA success looks like. On paper, I think it could be a good fit and a good hire, but for me, only time's going to tell or not with this thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good fit. I think it's a good idea. Go and get an NBA assistant. He's an alum, a guy familiar with the program. I think there's a lot of ways that it could work. But is this not the most little brother thing ever? Like, seriously.
I thought you were going to say something like that.
BYU made this move last year. They get this NBA assistant, longtime guy, smart dude. They've got the NIL backing. He comes in, overwhelming success. Overwhelming success. BYU is set up to be one of the 4 or 5 best jobs in the conference for the next decade. I will die on that hill. What's Utah go and do? They do the same thing. This is hilarious to me. I feel like I'm going crazy that Utah is doing this. Can you imagine if the roles were reversed? Let's go football. 10 years down the road, Kyle Whittingham is retired. Utah has a couple down years. They go and hire some young QB coach in the NFL from the Shanahan coaching tree. He comes in, has a ton of success, and then BYU does the same thing later. What would Utah fans do? They'd be having a heyday. They're the Utah fans. They're crazy.
Well, I just Kalani Sitake came from Utah before he was hired.
Yeah,
at BYU. So yeah, there's some. I don't know if it. Here's maybe the logic. If it worked 45 minutes south of you,
exactly.
I don't have a problem with them doing it.
No, I don't have a problem with them doing it. I think it's hilarious that Utah, this fan base that is very pompous and greater than thou, is doing the same thing that their so-called little brother is doing. I just think it's really funny, knowing the dynamic between those two schools and their relationship.
That's fair. Not all Utah fans are bad, though. There's some good ones out there. I have to give them credit.
Yeah,
I have to give them credit.
Speaking on the social media fans.
That's fair.
Which they've got quite a few of them. All right, we're gonna actually close with some football, just for a little bit. But first, we've got to do another edition of the Random Big 12 Player.
I've got a good one this week. I've got a really good one here, I think. You guys ready?
Yep.
Let's do it.
All right. This forward spent 4 years at one school, one Big 12 school, before transferring to an ACC school his final season. In the 2020-21 season, he led his team in scoring, finished 6th in the conference, averaging 14.7 points per game. Also led his team to the second round of the NCAA tournament. The following year, his numbers dipped with the coaching change, and his team didn't make the tournament.
I'm stuck on the transfer thing. Trying to think of guys who went to the ACC.
I got 2 more hints, so if you guys need another hint, I can give you one.
Was it? Nope, I'm dumb. That's the SEC.
The school he plays for is no longer in the Big 12.
Oh, gosh. Brady Manick.
Got it.
Nice.
Yes. My next clue there was going to be he looked a little bit like Larry Bird.
He did. That guy was good. I know he didn't have a ton of success, like individually at North Carolina, but
Yeah.
he was on the team that did they win the national championship? Or he was on the team that beat Coach K in the Final Four.
I guess his senior they would have lost to Kansas. Oh no, Kansas.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they beat Duke in Coach K's last game.
Yes.
And then lost to Kansas in the national championship. That was a good one. I don't think I would have gotten that if you didn't give me the clue that it was either Texas or OU. So
that's fair.
Half credit, I guess.
That's fair.
All right. I'm going to let you set up this next one because this has been your social media take of the last week. We're going to talk about very, very successful and very popular college football podcast host Josh Pate. What's your take on Pate?
If Aiden has the clip, I'll let some of the fans hear the clip. If not, I can just definitely go on my rant.
So Jesse came up to me and said, man, people are trashing you on Reddit about the Big 12. And I'm like, impossible. I love the Big 12. But I read that about 2 or 3 times. And I got to say, I kind of get it. I don't think you're entirely wrong with how we have talked about the Big 12 on the show. So when I watch the Big 12, I'm totally happy watching it in isolation and just enjoying it for what it is. That's when I watch it. When I'm on a national show, it's really hard to talk like that. This gets back to where I feel what you're saying in that post. I totally get what you're saying. We probably feel the same way. The difference is you're posting on Reddit. I'm hosting a national show. I don't mean that to sound like a douchebag. I mean literally, how do I talk otherwise on a national college football show? How do I engage a national college football audience talking about the Big 12, especially as you get later in a college football season, without speaking comparatively?
You know, this may be a hot take for some, but I am not a big Josh Pate guy. I know there are people out there that love him, and that's fine. I was never a big fan, and I'm sure he's a nice guy, but I can only take so much. And to his credit, he's not boring. He has a good pace, and he's about as slick as a used car salesman with his words, and I'm sure he can talk his way out of anything. But that doesn't change the fact that when it all boils down, much like every national media talking head out there, they cater to the Big Ten and the SEC. And some people, I guess, even from that Reddit post, are starting to take notice of that, which is why he ended up addressing it on his show earlier last week. And when people like him talk about how money has tainted the sport, do you know what else taints the sport? Having a national platform that covers college football and catering to 2 conferences. It's a big reason why the sport is screwed in the first place. And his explanation of why he doesn't talk about the Big 12 is crazy to me. Like, don't tell me you love the Big 12, and then when football season comes around, you don't give it the time of day. That's like telling a woman that you like her when you're alone with her, and then when you see her in public, you act like you don't know her. And at the end of the day, I get it. He runs a national college football show, and just like the others that do the same, they don't spend more than 5 minutes on the Big 12 or show it the respect that it deserves. And that is why I don't listen to any of them. So to me, I just didn't like what that explanation was at all. Your job as a national college football person with a national platform is to cover the entirety of college football. And when you spend 5 minutes on one conference, one of the power conferences for that matter, in a 60 to 75 minute show, to me is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I like Josh. I enjoy listening to him. I met him in Dallas. He's a nice guy, really hard worker. Iowa State fan too, but I do think this year the show, it went another level as far as being kind of the Power 2 conference heavy, and I'm not in those production meetings. I know that he has those numbers, and I know that he sees, we talk about, it doesn't matter, 7-5 Ole Miss or 6-6 LSU, and it gets more traction and it gets better ratings than talking about 10-2 Arizona State. And I hate that. I hate that exists, but from his perspective, I get it. I wish there would be a little more transparency. And I guess right there he is being transparent, that I truly do believe that he enjoys the Big 12 and he enjoys watching the Big 12, but from his perspective, he just doesn't view it as nationally relevant. And I disagree with that. That comes back to a lot of what I said in the fall, that even if I don't think a Big 12 team has a chance at winning a national championship, I don't think the national championship is what makes college football great at all. It's a part of the sport. It's there. It happens. But I think what's great about the sport is the Saturdays, the traditions, the tailgating, the rivalries. That's the stuff that I think should get the time of day, and I hope that we do that on our show. Like I think Farmageddon should be celebrated. I think Baylor, TCU should be celebrated. The Holy War. None of those teams involved in those games are ever going to win a national championship. Maybe TCU is a bad example because they came close, but you get my point. College football is about the Saturdays so much more than it is about the postseason. And I think from Maine to Arizona to Hawaii, you go all over the country, there is great football happening with great traditions week in, week out. And it doesn't just come back to, who are the 6 teams that can win it all in January.
Well said. And we're fortunate enough to have some great football and great basketball in this conference. So I'm really happy to be doing my part in trying to advertise for the conference, trying to, give it a voice. You, as well as you, Jake, you're doing the same thing. So I'm glad we have this platform to be able to do that to the rest of the Big 12 fans out there.
I enjoy doing it. We get to cover, may not
Absolutely.
be the best conference in America. It is in basketball.
It's the funnest conference in America.
The SEC, it's had its year in basketball. It's been better this year, but there's still not a better basketball league over the last decade than the Big 12. And in football, it's definitely not the best league, but I'll be damned if it's not the most fun. And
exactly.
That's what sports are about. That's what this sport is about specifically. So I'm glad that we have this platform to talk up and down the conference all the way from Arizona State, starting at the top, to Utah at the bottom. It's still so crazy to say that out loud, that was the order that it went in. But I'm happy that we get to talk about everyone involved and try to give everybody the light of day.
Way to go. I'm proud of you. Ending the show on a positive note there when I was going on a rant. That's a good way to wrap up. It's a good way to wrap up the show.
Well, folks, next time we record, I think we're going to have a bracket. I can't make any promises, but I think next week's show will be after Selection Sunday. So we'll be reacting to a full week in Kansas City, and we'll be looking ahead to the best 4 days on planet Earth of the year. The first round of the NCAA tournament, first and second round of the NCAA tournament. We're excited to do it right here on Bigger Than 12. Thank you to everyone that listens. If you please would like, subscribe, leave a comment, a review. All that helps out. And go support our great sponsors. Thank you so much for listening to Bigger Than 12.